Oh, we're live.
All right, and sorry everybody. We were actually talking and we realized a couple of minutes in that it actually didn't go through. So we totally apologize, and unfortunately Bob, Tony, and Drew are going to have to do this all over again. So we truly apologize for everyone out there who we're having difficulties joining, but we're back on track, no pun intended, and we will give this our best shot again. So
I was never worried for a second because TrainWorld stands behind all their products. So when
including free YouTube live shows. So
we apologize about that. But okay, so tonight we have CEO Bob Grubba, Broadway Limited Trains, the big Poobah. and we appreciate you being on here. And Tony, you had a great idea to get us all on together. And Tony, if you want to introduce yourself and talk about what you wanted to kind of put together for the show.
Tony Cook I'm the editor of Model Railroad News, monthly publication on new items in the hobby and all scales. We report announcements and then also review items, as you know. Then I do HO Collector Quarterly, and I'm now managing editor for Diesel Era, which has also joined the White River Productions family. And I've got my buddy Drew here, Drew Warrington from the Northern Delaware Model Railroad Club, who started up a YouTube channel when the pandemic closed things down so he could still interact with his hobby buddies and such. And Drew's channel has just taken off. He's a high schooler that's into steam locomotives. So naturally, Broadway Limited is a company that he's always following because who makes steam like Broadway?
That's true.
We wanted to talk about the new Paragon 4 and then the brass hybrid Challenger that's coming out later this year, because he just started messaging me with this. Did you see they're going to do this? And have you seen this? And then I'm like, I can't
constant new releases. He's going to block me soon.
These questions, but I said, let's see if we can't get somebody that can talk a little bit about them. So Paragon 4 is the new DCC sound electronic thing, replacing Paragon 3, or not replacing, but is like the latest revision of it. And we're so fortunate tonight to have some of Bob Grubba's time. And Bob will tell us a little bit about, I'm going to go ahead and show first this is the new HO scale. Is it up there? There's the new HO scale GP20s. The first run of these is due out, I believe. Is it shipping in June, Bob?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and this is all new tooling for Broadway. Road accurate details on it as well. We'll have a teaser review of this early sample is in the July Model Railroad News, and I have things up online for it now. And you're looking at, I think, one of the first pictures that's been out, and I hope this is the finished, and this is, I think, a production or close to it model, but that is the Paragon 4 electronics on top of the mechanism, correct, Bob?
That is.
And what are we going to add a Paragon 4? The big thing I saw was the capacitor to kind of keep alive across dirty track and connection problems, which, boy, for sound units, is there anything more frustrating than when they trip up or hiccup and then go back and reboot and start over the whole sound thing? This 20, then when I put it on the test track, within about its first loop, it's charged up the capacitor, and I ran it all afternoon one day, and not once did I have that typical, where it went back and had to start over. That it's just amazing. I love that. But there's more features than that for Paragon 4 too as well, right?
There are quite a few more features. We've added a handful of new features, and then we went back and corrected kind of everything that we knew to be wrong with the models based on years of having them out in service. Things like we were having problems with the smoke unit failures, and so we started to study that and found that primarily when they were failing because they were running out of fluid, and people were not adding fluid, but also were not turning them off, so they're just letting them run. That would cause the wick inside of them to char. And anyone who's never taken apart a smoke unit, it's basically a little resistance wire that gets hot. It sets against a wick that's made of a high temp kind of a felt, and that wick soaks in a little bath of mineral oil. It soaks it up to when it comes in contact with the heater. That's what causes the smoke, and then there's a fan that blows that out. Well, we found that these were failing because they were getting too hot when they ran out of fluid. So we just put a little sensor inside that would detect the heat, and if it got above a certain level, it just backs the heat off. So as you start to run out of smoke fluid, the smoke will diminish, but it won't burn itself up. That was one of the things that we corrected. Another example of something we corrected is we were having motor driver chip failures, and it would present itself as a damaged component on a circuit board, and you could see that it was charred and damaged. But rather than just replace it or whatever, we started looking into why they were failing. And what we found was as the motors were running and starting to wear, the motor brushes, which are made of a conductive carbon material, would make a dust, and that dust would collect on oil inside the motor and eventually would cake up enough that would cause a short between the commutator plates, and that would burn out the motor driver. And so we did a handful of things. We had the motor manufacturer put in a little nylon bushing that prevented the oil from traveling down the motor shaft. Then we had our factory be more careful with where they put the oil. Then we made a stronger motor driver chip that wouldn't fail as easily. And then we changed the software a little bit to make it anticipate that real quick short that happens there. So that's the type of approach that we've taken to kind of try to just make the models as robust as we can possibly make them, because we know that our customers don't like to have a model that they just purchase and they get it and they run it for a while. And usually when trains fail, it's like everything else. They don't fail when you're testing them at home. They fail when you take them to the club and you got everybody over for the holidays. You put it on the track. It's their favorite you take it out. That's when they fail. So yeah, we're trying to prevent that. And just as an indicator of the approach that we've taken, the trend in the hobby in the last few years has been to add capacitor packs, aftermarket ones. There's several companies that make them. We make one. In Paragon 3 later years, we made a little plug so you could plug ours into it and you didn't have to solder it in place and things like that. But just adding more capacitance is only part of the solution. What we found was, we didn't think our electrical pickup was good enough, and the capacitors were kind of a stopgap method. We can't go out to people's layouts and make them clean and maintain their tracks. All we can do is control the locomotive. So what we did was we implemented a couple of tests at the factory level. One is that when the train's running down a track, we make a little plastic ramp about the width of a truck, and it's on the left rail, and the train has to go over that. It's about a 1/4 millimeter tall for N scale, a 1/2 millimeter tall for HO scale. You go over the ramp, and then go a little ways down the track, and they'd be on the right rail. And so we make all of our locomotives have that flexibility that they can go over that type of obstruction without the capacitor pack. And then we do another test that we used to do on samples, but we've implemented 100%, where we take two pieces of rails that are not insulated, they butt up against each other, then we make the train span across that. And so it's got one truck on one side of the rails, one truck on the other, and then we take a a meter, and we measure from the right rail through the front trucks, through the locomotive, out through the back trucks into the other rail. So we test that on both rails, and we set a standard that it can only be so many ohms. But what that does is we started to find that, just things like putting too much grease on the axle could cause, insulation, and it would make the electrical pickup just not very good. So we put those standards in place, and then we added an internal capacitor pack on the board. And the reason we put it on the board is so that it could be controlled. And there are times when you'll want to control the capacitor pack. For example, if you've got some type of a block layout and you want to be able to shut off the power and have the train stop, you can set a CV. I think it's CV number 12. You set it to, its default is 5 seconds. You can set it to 2 seconds or 1 second. The locomotive will stop after a second. Sounds will die after a second, and you'll be able to control it that way. Or if you're a person like me, where you want, when you turn off the power, you want all the trains to stop and be quiet, then you set them all to a lower value and they stop. And as long as you've got reasonably good track work, a second is a long time. Without that, the capacitors that we typically had on would last, on the order of milliseconds, a few milliseconds, which is enough to usually, because we do have electrical pickup on virtually all the wheels, and some models, even the lead and trailing trucks, we've got electrical pickups on. N scale, it's a little bit different because there's not room for the big capacitors. I'll hold these up. So this is an HO model, and these are the capacitors, and there's 3 of them. They're pretty good size. They seem small until you try to put them in N scale, and that's the N scale board. You look how thin that is, and this red square thing on there, that's called a tantalum capacitor. Stupidly expensive. A little bit hard to get right now because they're used in all small components around the world. They're used in iPhones and fighter jets and automobiles and everything else. But we put those on an N scale just because you start talking about that's an N scale switcher, and I'd love for somebody, if somebody thinks they can figure out where to put some big capacitors in an N scale switcher, you tell me. But so where we've got several seconds of time in HO, we've got a fraction of a second in N scale. But what that means is you can't, turn off the track power and have it keep making sounds for a while. But you can. This is a test that I wouldn't recommend you guys do, but I do. I just flick the model with my finger a little bit, just enough to lift the 2 wheels off the track for just a fraction of a second. And you'll see it'll lift and they'll set back down and it'll keep right on going. It never makes a blip. Well, what that translates to is that if you've got reasonably good track work, you can run our Paragon 4 N scale models on, they'll just run smoothly on layouts that a lot of other models will stop on. And I just did a recent test. I purchased 4 of our competitors' models, and I ran them on. We've got a layout in our office that we never clean, we never dust, we never do anything to. We keep it purposely horrible. And when we put an N scale model on there, most models just go an inch and they stop, and you tap them and they go another inch, they go another inch. Well, I was able to put the Paragon 4s on there, and they would run all the way around at a really low speed, nice and smooth. I thought was pretty good. So those are some of the technical things we've done with Paragon 4. Some of the software type things that we've done is, we constantly get feedback from customers that they want various features, and whenever we can, we try to add those in. And I'll go through just a couple of them. There's a switcher mode for people that want to have real nice low speed control and quick response. You set 1 CV, it goes through, and this was always available, but you had to set 6 or 7 CVs to lower the momentum, increase the response speed and things like that. Now you can do it with 1 CV. You set it. When you want to turn it back off, you just set it back, and it switches them all back. And it makes the trains a lot better for switching. They can accelerate quickly. A lot of the momentum's gone. They respond much more quickly. They start and stop much more quickly. That's a simple thing. Another thing that we've done is we call this pro mode lighting, and it's the same thing. It gets set by 1 CV, and it changes from our typical way our models respond is that almost all the lighting is automatic. And if your headlight's on and you're going and you stop, it usually will go to dim, kind of the Rule 17 lighting. And you go in reverse, the rear light comes on. When you start moving in reverse, it gets bright. The cab light will come on when you stop, things like that. But we had a number of customers that they want to control everything independently. For example, some of the models will have like a red marker light that is only used in certain circumstances. Well, they didn't want it on in any other circumstances. They want to be able to control it with function key. So when you switch to the pro mode lighting, almost all the lights and a few of the sound features that used to be automatic, those all go to manual, and it assigns new function keys to them, which I guess most people know this. You can redefine any of our function keys, and if you want your headlight to be on function key 5, you can put it on function key 5 just by changing the CV. But the pro mode will set all that up automatically, so you then have individual control over all the lights. So the front light is on a separate function key from the rear light. Both of them have their own dimmers. The cab light is on its own. The generator is on its own. That used to be the dynamo would come on. When you turn on the headlight, the dynamo sound would play, and when it got up to speed, it would bring the headlight on. Well, now that's completely separate. You can hit a function key, hear the dynamo sound come on. When you're ready for the headlight, you turn it on. When you're ready for the marker lights or whatever lights, as long as the locomotive has them and they're independently wired, you can control them separately. So those are the types of things that we've done with Paragon 4. Again, just kind of listening to our customers, listening to our service department, the problems they're having, and trying to fix everything we know how to fix. And so that's what Paragon 4 is.
Yeah, Bob, sorry, Tony, just a quick question, because we're getting a lot of them. A lot of people are asking if you're going to sell the Paragon 4 boards separate to replace the lower models, or how would that work?
We haven't made that decision yet. We certainly could. We typically try to make our boards so that all the plugs are the same and they'll just plug in. The only reason that we wouldn't is in the past when we've done things like that, we get a lot of calls for retrofits and things like that. When we actually make it available, we don't sell enough of them to even bother. And there's a company that we use. It's local near us in Ormond Beach. It's a guy that's very good at rewiring and fixing and things like that. And you can find him on our support section of our website. And he's able to retrofit kind of almost everything that's retrofittable, where it requires wiring and things like that. We might just have him do that. We haven't really decided on that yet.
In that switcher mode, I think I understand it all. Does it also reduce, like, is your full throttle taken down to where like maximum speed is 35 miles an hour? Yeah, are you in a slower mode?
Yeah, it lowers it remaps the motor so that it operates up to about half the speed that it normally would.
That's nice. You'd have more range then, essentially. If it was 60, 70 miles an hour, the whole throttle will only get you to 30. So you have a lot more in control there. That's nice.
I mean, these sound like huge differences that are really going to impact the performance, and should make the consumers and the model train community out there really be happy. Because on any, whether it's HO or N scale, it shouldn't make a huge impact on anything you kind of run.
We hope so. Like I said, we've kind of gone about it. One, trying to add features our customers wanted. Two, trying to eliminate any problems that we know of. We've made quite a few improvements to our recording technology. I've talked about this before in other places. Before we had the rolling thunder system, most of the sounds we played were played through speakers that are, they're that big. They're like the size of a quarter in HO scale and N scale. They're that big. They're tiny, and the physics is just that those speakers won't play low frequencies. They just won't. They'll play typically a range from 600 to 6,000 hertz, and most people have probably heard that you can hear between 20 and 20,000 hertz. Or at least Drew can hear that. The rest of us probably can't. With those, especially the low frequencies, everything below 600 hertz, if you try to play it through that speaker, it's not that it does nothing, it's that it makes distortion. And so what we and virtually every other model train company has done is we use an equalizer to eliminate those low frequency sounds so that they don't cause distortion, which means that they weren't in our recordings. So a lot of our older recordings were recording with a single microphone, and we hoard recordings through the years because a lot of these locomotives, they'll run for a while and then they get scrapped or they stop working or whatever. And it's, especially the older steam, it's just harder. It gets harder and harder to get these recordings. So we hoard them when we can get them. And one of the things we found with the rolling thunder system is we really needed a lot of new recordings with low frequency. So we've done a lot, as much as we can with COVID and all this stuff, get out and do some recordings. And it's a different style of recording. We are now recording most of the locomotives with 2 microphones that are synchronized. And it's a microphone that's up close, usually on a boom that's held right near what we're trying to record, like we're trying to record a compressor or something. We'll have a microphone right up next to it, a few inches from it. And then on a stand 50 yards away, we'll have a low frequency microphone that's set up to record those long wavelengths that are the low frequency sounds. And so then when we start to build up the sound set for the model, we put those two together, synchronized, and then because of the way the sound system works, where it's sending the low frequency to the subwoofer and the high frequency to the onboard speaker, we can get it to play both sounds simultaneously and not have it rattle the little speakers. And so, those are the types of things that we're doing to try to make these things just sound as realistic as possible. And I think we're at kind of a disadvantage in the hobby right now because we don't have as many neighborhood hobby stores as we used to. If this was 50 years ago and you came out with this type of technology, first people would fall over, they wouldn't know what to do with it. So it would blow them away. But if we did have it, you'd be able to go into a hobby store and they'd have a layout and they'd have a subwoofer there and you could listen to it. Well, there aren't just a lot of places around the country that you can do that anymore. But if you can get a chance to get to a good hobby store, a train show, whatever, and you can hear the rolling thunder, it's just spectacular. I mean, as an engineer, we came up with the idea and we built it, and it took a while. But when I thought it was a success, I was sitting in my office one day, this is several years ago, and I heard this sound, obviously a diesel engine. I look up and I'm looking for a truck. I'm thinking we're getting a semi delivering a load of trains, And what it was is the sound engineer was in the room down the hall working on a diesel, and it sounded like a diesel and it felt like a diesel. I don't know how people's neighbors and families are going to like this, but for the train guys, man, this is just cool. And
wow.
And so if you haven't heard Rolling Thunder, I think you're missing a part of the model railroading experience. You need to get out and listen to it somewhere.
Yeah, it's amazing you have all these new sounds going on. Could I ask, what portion of the sounds could you use from what you had, and how many are new? Roundabout.
Every time we make a model,
Mm-hmm.
we'll have a lot of these things they just aren't running anymore, especially the steam engines. So
Yeah.
occasionally someone will do a whistle blow. We'll go out and record all these whistles, and we'll store them. If anytime we get near a steam engine, we'll record the steam engine, whatever it is, and those kind of vary, among like 2-cylinder steam engines, as long as you're not talking something unusual, a 3-cylinder or anything like that, or an articulated, whatever. Their sound is largely dictated by the diameter of the pistons, and so if we've got one that's the correct diameter pistons, and it's not a completely worn out and unserviced model, that it just sounds like there's something wrong with it. Which those are kind of cool too. Sometimes we'll put those in for alternate sounds or on a weathered locomotive or something like that. But some of the sounds, they don't have a lot of low frequency in them, so it doesn't so much matter. For example, a lot of the whistles, there's just not a lot of low frequency there, and so those we can use kind of the older stuff. A lot of the diesel locomotives, you really need to have that rumble is just cool.
Yeah.
In some of the horns, most of the horns, there just isn't enough, and we kind of we'll artificially add it in there a little bit. And we'll take things like we'll take the horn and we'll digitally modify the sounds to get it to the low frequency component. Then we'll add that back in, and it's a little bit of playing games, which we have to do when things don't exist anymore, or like I said, there's no low frequency component in the recording. But does that answer your question?
Yeah, it's exciting to hear that we have all these new sounds, because I listened to between Blue Line and Paragon 2 and 3, and you hear differences between different locomotives that are run between the lines, and it's exciting to see what's going to come in Paragon 4.
Well,
I really like on the articulated. I was running that Y6B Malley. I got one of the Pevler Blue what ifs that you guys did. In fact, that's on the cover of our July issue and the first locomotive review. That was so awesome. And hearing the articulated, the chuffing and chugging are just a little out of sync, as they would be on the real locomotive, because they're not both running at the same time. So I thought that was really nicely done.
So I often wonder, when we're making something, how many people even hear what we've done and understand it. So the way the software in those models works is there are a couple of CVs, one that sets how far out of sync the two steam engines are. So you've got, on an articulated, you've got a front steam engine and a rear steam engine, essentially two. And for various reasons, small differences in diameter of the wheels and a little bit slip, they come in and out of sync. So if, like, for example, you're not going to just hear 8 chuffs in a row. You might hear that for a little while, but you listen to the same locomotive 5 minutes later, and one engine is slightly out of sync, and it doesn't sound the same. So what we do is we've got 2 CVs that control the way the articulation, the 2 articulated engines come in and out of sync, and one sets a start point where you could set a CV to have them both be perfectly in sync, and it would sound like a regular 4 chuff per revolution locomotive. Or you could set it to start anywhere along the way, in and out of sync. And then there's a slip speed, and what the slip speed CV does is over a certain amount of time running down the track, it'll gradually slide in and out of sync. And so if you set that to 0, they'll stay in sync. So people that don't like the sound of an articulated steam locomotive could make it sound like a regular one by setting both the CVs to 0. We've got it set so that in a kind of a short period of time, a couple minutes running around the track, you'll hear it go in and out of sync, where it'll sound like it's 8 evenly spaced chuffs, and then it'll sound like they start to overlap, and it'll make that ratty little and it's a I don't know that it's a pleasant sound when it just sounds like it's like it just
It's
sounds
all part of
great.
the experience.
It's all
Yeah,
part of the experience.
yeah.
Yeah,
And that's what caught my attention on that one, is in testing it going around. Yeah, I would catch it going in and out of sync between the two, and I'm like, oh wow, again, it's got that as a feature that it can run both those, basically two steam locomotives, because that's what a Malley essentially is. And I thought that was really well done on that.
Well, thank you. We I think one of our weaknesses at Broadway is that we probably spend too much time on, engineering, software, things like that, and probably not enough time explaining to our customers what these features are. And an example of that, we put in all of our models, most of our models, like a 30-some page manual. To me, it seems fairly simple. It's the stuff you've got to have. Then you can go on our support tab at broadway-limited.com. If you printed it out, it's about that thick, a technical reference manual. It goes through every CV. And, some of them are, it's just difficult to understand. You got to convert from binary to, base 10 and things like that to figure out what it is and how to do it. But you can change so many things about the models, and that's all kind of part of what was set up in the NMRA standard. But it makes it so there's so many variations in the way everything can work that it's hard to communicate that to our customers. An example of that is, for example, we've got oscillating ditch lights. You can set up those oscillating ditch lights so that they, I think most of the models, the default is you turn them on and they're on solid. And then when you blow the whistle, or sometimes it's the bell, they'll oscillate, and then when you stop doing that, they'll go back to solid. But you can also set them so that they're off, and then they come on and oscillate. You can set them so they oscillate with independently of any light or any horn or bell, so that you can just control them whenever you want with a function key, or you can make them so they're just on solid. And all those require CV changes, and I think we could probably talk to 100 customers, and probably one might know that those features all exist. It's one of the things that I recognize as a shortcoming. We're trying to do a little bit better job of getting that information out there.
Yeah.
I think though, and people like Drew, especially when he's got a model that he's working on, he will tell me things like, hey, did you know it's this, or it'll do that? And it's like, no. And like my assistant editor is 24, and he's the same way. Well, you can program this, or you can fix that. I'm like, no, but I'll bring it over next time and you can do that for me. But,
no, that's because they went online and read the technical reference manual. Right, Drew?
They've done more of their homework than me.
Right, exactly.
I'm always impressed. Like, oh, yeah, I didn't know that, but yeah, that's very awesome. So at least you got people you can call and hit up for questions,
Now, Bob, I noticed anytime I speak to you, I'm amazed, because you're not just running a company, but you're a complete tech monster. Like you know the insides and outs and all the intricacies, and it seems like you know all the I'm serious. So how'd you kind of get started with, I guess, creating these models and like knowing the knowledge of how to like build something, or do you attribute something for your success?
So when I was a kid, we had model trains around the house. Back in the day when we used to get in trouble for putting the glass Christmas ornaments on the track and running over the trains. When I moved out of the house, my bedroom, I couldn't move back in because the bedroom was converted to a train room. And I'm a mechanical engineer, and probably 10 years into my career, answered an ad in the Wall Street Journal. Lionel Trains was looking for a director of engineering, and uprooted the family, moved to Detroit, worked there for a few years, and then decided, we're from Florida, we had to get back home. If I wanted to stay married, I had to get back home. So we moved back to Florida, and I was working for K-line electric trains for a few years, and then during that time, started at Broadway. I was initially just an investor, and the guys I was involved with in there, they kind of got older and retired. I bought out their shares of the company, and so Broadway Limited's been around now for 20 years. Been doing this ever since.
Good for you. Good for you.
Did you hear that, Drew? Mechanical engineering. It's tough, but look what you can do. Yeah.
It's going to be a long 4 years at college, but it's worth it.
There you go.
I see.
There you go.
College is fun too.
Well, I might not be able to afford college because all my money's going to TrainWorld, Broadway, and Rapido stuff. So, it's going to be a hard decision, and I'm not sure I can make it tonight, but I'll think about it.
You call me one day, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we can make a deal. I'll see. Yeah.
Well, speaking of where all your money goes, let's talk about what's going to be one of the models this year.
The money taker out of my pocket.
Yeah.
Yep.
Here we go. There it is.
See.
The CSA 2, is it, Drew, that's coming out?
Yep. CSA 2.
Very good.
Here's an early look at it, and wow. This is going to be a brass hybrid, right, Bob?
Yeah, and so people who don't know what the brass hybrid line is, X years ago, you go buy a brass model, and back then they were approaching $2,000.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, and that price range is there's just only so many people that can afford that, and we built some brass stuff before, and you can sell a few hundred of them, and it's really a niche market, and so we focused then on tooled either plastic or die-cast models, and the problem with those is the tooling is ridiculously expensive. To tool this locomotive, and I happen to know this number because we tooled not that many years ago, a later version of the Challenger, and it's just the tooling is in excess of $250,000. And that's not the design and the everything else that goes with it. That's a lot of money, and this is a small industry. There are only so many models that are popular enough that you can spend that kind of money and recoup it and make a profit. We have to make a profit or we'll be gone. But that left a whole lot of really cool locomotives that you just couldn't do them. They could either be done as a brass model for a few $1,000s, or they could be done. They couldn't be done at all because there's no way you could sell enough of them to pay for that tooling. So we came up with the brass hybrid line, I can't even remember, 6 or 7 years ago. And what these are is they're a hybrid. They're kind of a mix between brass and a tooled steam locomotive. And most of them are the same way. The chassis is die-cast, and that allows us to get a really precision fit in the gears and all that stuff because the die-cast parts are, they come out of the mold and they're all, pretty much uniform in shape. We make things like the brake rigging and some of the leading and trailing truck parts and things like that are plastic. And the reason for that is that you don't have the problems with shorting. A lot of times a brass model, they're just not all that runnable because if you touch it, you're going to push the brake rigging or the sand lines or something into the wheels. It's going to cause a dead short, and people have to be really a pretty gifted mechanic to get them to run. And so we came up with these where basically the running gear is die-cast or plastic out of our similar to any other model that we have, but almost all of the body, and in this case, it is virtually all of the body, the tender body, the locomotive body, the boiler, the cab, the back head, all those things are all brass. And what that means is they're more expensive to build. The unit price is substantially more. our brass hybrids are usually selling for $600 to $900 retail price. But the brass also gives you just a really fine level of detail.
Yeah.
Things like the lip along the roof of the cab is, it can be thinner in brass, and you can look at that and you can kind of see that they just look better. They look great. And it also makes it easier for us to do variations. Like in this particular run of this model, we're doing 3 variations. And so Union Pacific did something like 105 Challengers that they ordered. They got them in 5 batches. This one was the second batch. And I can't remember how many locomotives it was. Drew probably knows off the top of his head to put him on the spot. something like on the order of 30 locomotives. They were numbered in the beginning of the 3,900 range. And after a number of years, they were having problems with them. And the problems were that when they built these, they tried to do them kind of economically, and they bolted the cylinders to the frame. And so after a number of years, the bolts were breaking and they were coming misaligned and having problems. So they did a rebuild, I think in like 1947, and they welded the cylinders to the frame. And that went on for a little while, and I guess they were probably still having problems with that, because then they took the front engine of these and they replaced it with one that was the cylinders were integrally cast into the frame, and also the pilot is all one piece. So then it made it really unlikely that they were going to, certainly they were going to come unbolted or the welds weren't going to break, but I think it eliminated all the problems. And so we did 3 variations of these. We did the as-built, and the as-built, you can look, let's see if I can bring up a picture here of the as-built. This is I'm just going to hold my phone up. And you can see on the front, that little section there, there's like a cross webbing and a hole. That's kind of one of the spotting features of the as-built. And then some years later, when they re-welded them, they put this plate across the front that eliminated that. And then so the handrails have changed and some things like that. So they look a little bit different in the front. And both of those still had the tubular constructed pilot. And then later, when they did the integral cylinders into the frame, it looks similar. There's a plate that comes across the whole front, and then you can also see that the pilot is that casting rather than constructed out of individual pipes. And when they did that, they also changed the sand dome on some of them, not all of them. On the ones we modeled, changed the sand dome to the big square one that people probably recognize from the later Challenger. So that variation looks a lot more like the later Challengers. So those are the 3 that we've done. And for us to have done that with a tooled steam locomotive to do those variations would have added probably another $50,000 in tooling. But because these pieces are made of brass, it's a negligible difference. So it lets us, just for really the cost of the design and some, probably a few $1,000s worth of lost wax brass parts, we can make those variations. So, excuse me, that lets us make the brass hybrids. They're still expensive, but they're probably a third the price of a brass model. And the big difference in my mind, they come painted, they've got sounds, they run well out of the box. They've got engineer figures usually. They've got window glazing and working lights and all that other stuff. I think they're for models that aren't going to be, tooled and mass produced. I think they're a good bargain for the hobby, and it's taken us a little while to get our customers to understand what they are. But they're one of our most popular models right now.
Wow.
We try to do 3 or 4 a year. They take us a while to build because it's a lot of hand soldering. All those pieces are hand soldered together, and they're expensive, but I think people like them. They've caught on and they sell really well.
Yeah,
Wow.
I think it's so awesome because, as you say, it's kind of the best of everything in that, oh, it's a cool brass model, but then it's also not $2,000. Yet it's got a contemporary mechanism sound. It's painted. I mean, they're all around winners. Yeah, when I can't remember what was the first one I got of those, but it was like, wow, that's so awesome that it's brass, but it runs like a new great model, and then it's all decorated and has all the right details. Yeah, I think it's a fantastic thing. Whether you're an operator or a collector, they're a lot of fun to have. And this one is later this year. I think, Ken, you've got these up on your website. I think can be reserved now.
Yeah, we're taking pre-orders on them. And Bob, you really did hit like the nail on the head, because I remember those like pure brass engines, and they were just at a price point that you guys were actually before your time. They were beautiful engines, but they were really expensive. But these new brass hybrids that you're coming out with, it's like that sweet spot where it's just above a regular model, but everybody wants more detail, and your engines that are brass hybrids are just so beautiful and gorgeous, and it really makes you the king of steam. Just really gorgeous, streamlined stuff. So it's really that sweet spot where people are willing to pay that extra detailing, and whoever came up with that concept to mix the two is a genius. If that was you.
Yeah, and it is. Yeah, it's great because, again, I think brass has that like Cadillac or Lincoln feel to it, of like, oh, I'd love to have brass, but I can't afford it. So these, when I see them, it is like, wow,
this is like a Tesla. You get the best of both worlds.
It's like, yeah, I can get a brand new Cadillac for this price. It's like, that's awesome. So yeah, that's one thing I like about them. Yeah,
it's funny that Tony refers to premium cars as Cadillacs because it's back in the day, and Drew's the new school with the Teslas.
There you go. Sorry, there's the difference. Yeah,
but both excellent
models.
But really cool, and we're excited about that. And so you got that coming out, and also the Santa Fe engine.
I'm
boy. Not sure, Drew, if you want to touch up on that too.
Yeah, which is that one?
Well, better than brass detail. I think that's Athern's slogan. I thought it was Broadway's until it came out of my mouth. Anyway, this is better than brass. I'm sorry if I'm infringing on Athern's slogan, but I saw that video the other day, and
back it up.
Well, I saw the video and I saw the piping on it, and it reminded me better than brass of the SP&S brass hybrid you made a few years ago. I'm like, brass versus plastic. If I was an alien, you'd put those side by side. I wouldn't be able to tell which was die cast and which was brass. It's really amazing what you guys have done with all this new Paragon 4 level detail.
So one of the things I would say about that is, if you've ever seen our models unpainted, and we just put out some pictures of our FEF 2 and 3 that were unpainted, and what you'll see is like this model. This is the one we have to be talking about. Yeah. The boiler is die cast. The tender's die cast, but if this was unpainted, you'd see that a lot of the pieces on here, some of the piping, handrails, things like that, a lot of it is brass.
Wow.
And the reason for that is that there's a technique called lost wax casting. And yeah, there we go.
We need to talk about that next.
Yeah, you can see on this, the pieces that are brass, the black pieces are plastic on this. The silver pieces are die cast, and all the brass colored ones are brass. So there's a fair bit of brass on these. And what I was starting to talk about is lost wax casting. So if you want to get really fine detail, they use this in jewelry making and things like that. A person hand carves a shape. They usually carve it out of a soft metal, copper or something like that. Solder pieces together, and it can get really intricate shapes, things that can't be cast, because in the casting, a mold has to open and close. In lost wax casting, it can be really intricate little undercuts and shapes and things like that. They take that and they use it to make a rubber mold. They just pour it into a container of rubber, then they cut around it and cut it out, and now they've got a little rubber mold shape. They pour wax into that, and they make a wax duplicate of the part. And then they take that wax duplicate and they put it in like a powder ceramic, and they compact it, and then they put it in a centrifuge. While it's in the centrifuge, they drop brass in, molten brass, and the molten brass goes in and melts the wax, and because it's heavier, it displaces it. And then they turn off the centrifuge, they let it cool, they break open the mold powder, and out comes, a piece that looks just like the original piece, but it's quick, it's relatively inexpensive, and really high detail. And so a lot of these parts on here we make out of lost wax castings.
Wow.
And, like I said, it's the same technology they use to make jewelry and earrings, things like that.
Now that's an FEF, but that's something you announced, or
I don't. Is it officially? I know you guys shared pictures. I don't know.
Are we not supposed to show this?
No, you can show it.
It's on Facebook, so it's free game.
So
Tony's got access to everything. What's going on?
he pays attention to our Facebook feed. So this is just a teaser. It's a model we've been working on for a while, and it's obviously the tooling is finished, and we just got the first samples, and so we threw up some pictures to let people who are interested in such things start to know that it's coming, and see how Ken knows it's coming.
Right.
It'll be out. We'll do an announcement with pricing and all that other stuff here soon enough. And we're trying to announce. Years ago we used to announce stuff. In fact, I think the whole industry did this. We would announce stuff and then gather orders for several years. Mm-hmm. Finally get enough orders. We're like, well, we think this is viable. We'll go ahead and start the tooling, and then we make the tooling and produce it. Well, there are some problems with that. It irritated customers. They're like, man, how long is this going to take? I'm going to die before this comes out. So now, I mean, we're not any faster. It still takes us several years to do a model. But what we do most of the time instead is we wait until it's about time to deliver. Within a month or two of delivery, we'll make the announcement, we'll collect the orders, ship it, and move on. And so I think it's better for our customers. They hear about it, they place the order. A few months later, it shows up. They're happy. I think that works better. It's a little riskier for us because we don't have the actual market feedback. Occasionally, we've made mistakes on models. We get a lot of requests for a model, and then we spend all that money to make it, and it doesn't sell well. It's like, man, you can only make a few mistakes. We're a tiny little company. If we make too many mistakes, we wouldn't be here anymore. So we're real careful with what we choose. But I do think that this practice of announcing the model when it's almost ready, or certainly the tooling is done, that's the time when we can actually predict pretty well when it's coming.
That's awesome. You guys got so many steam engines on the pipeline. I know everybody out there, their wallets are going to be hurting, but let me just show you two more steam engines. So this we're talking about, but this is a beautiful picture. And Bob, I got to commend you because the person who takes your pictures and all the artwork, they really capture the high definition of the beauty of your trains. And this is just a gorgeous little steam engine. And I think this is going to be one of your best sellers, just because it's a small enough steam engine that it could fit on any layout, and it's just beautifully detailed, gorgeous. And then you also got the New York Central Dreyfuss, gorgeous. I mean, you guys are just one after another, just tons of steam engines, just beautiful stuff. So, and Drew, I know that's going to keep you busy too.
Yeah, I mean, I need to budget. I'm like, okay, maybe if I mow X amount of lawns by this time, I could afford a Dreyfuss, and then maybe by the end of the year, I could pull off a Challenger. You know, you got to budget these things.
Ken, I probably hear about this Dreyfuss Hudson once a week from Drew.
Yeah.
Wow, that's going to be so neat. I really got to have one of those. I'm like,
Hey,
yeah.
Drew, have you ever heard the phrase "work smarter, not harder"?
Yeah, well, see, my work smarter, not harder is just send Tony a Facebook message about everything like once a week. Just send him my list.
Well, I think you should see if you can get Tony to arrange for you to get a Dreyfuss to do a review on.
I mean,
And,
I think that would be a good idea.
I think Tony's saving that card up his sleeve for his own layout.
No.
He was hiding that one for me.
I already told him I bought one from the older run of those, so I have a Broadway Dreyfuss. So yeah, it would be up there. Yeah,
He said we're not reviewing it, but it is very, very good. So I think he's just trying to get me to buy it. We'll see.
And Bob, do you know? Talking about the Dreyfuss, do you know where I guess in the pipeline they are? Are they on the water or container or?
They're no longer on the water.
Oh.
Okay. Cool.
So,
Cool.
So the way our process works, our product all comes into Long Beach, California, and UPS gets a container, opens it up, and ships it out to the individual customers. UPS has the container. I would think that you should get tracking numbers and an invoice within days.
Cool. And I'm still waiting for the Vanderbilt Hudson.
Oh yeah.
Everybody
Is that fair game?
Are we gonna do it? Not gonna do it? Hopefully.
Oh, I heard from the Broadway Limited Facebook group, which I highly recommend you join. It's in tooling, supposedly from a rumor. Is that true? Can you confirm?
Do you see, Bob? This is what we go through about.
Bob's getting red.
Yeah.
His face is turning all red.
Hey, you can pass. You can say pass.
No, I don't mind. This is one of those ones that we announced, and then kind of the way we used to do things and collect orders, and this one just never had enough orders, and so we were sitting here as a business person. You say, well, we've got 3,000 people that want this model, and we've got 800 people that want this one, and they cost the same to build. Okay, which one are you going to build?
Mm-hmm.
And so we put it off. We finally decided to build it. The tooling, we were thinking it was going to be reasonably inexpensive because we already own the chassis from our New York Central Hudson that in real life was the actual chassis, and so it's perfect. And all we got to do is tool a boiler. We went back and forth making it a hybrid. The price was fairly high. Making it a tooled, and so we decided to tool it, and the tooling was so expensive. So we put it on hold and taken it off hold so many times I can barely remember its status. But we will eventually make an announcement on it.
Okay, so it is coming soon,
well,
possibly. Can either confirm or deny.
We just have to get Ken to place another few hundred orders, and we'll be there.
Maybe it'll just become a TrainWorld exclusive.
I'm telling you, it's one of our best-selling steam engines.
Speaking of TrainWorld exclusims, I'll show you guys.
Change the subject, quick.
Broadway Limited. When if we're making a particular model, if any of our dealers or distributors want to, make a custom run, we do it at the same time, and usually they'll provide, kind of artwork and say this is what we want. And this is an example.
Wow.
Really a cool paint scheme. spin it around. So you can do this SD40. It'll be out a little later in the year.
And Bob surprised us with this tonight because I had no idea they even had a sample.
I was going to say, Ken, have you seen this? Because you'd given me drawings. I've got drawings in the magazine. Why didn't you have these pictures? Look at that. Wow.
But he's going to be upset I didn't tell him about it.
Well, we've got it, but I hadn't seen it.
Wow.
That's
Well,
nice.
there's exactly one of these in existence, and it's sitting right here in my hand. I saved it for.
Oh, look at the top. Wow. It's got a stripe and stars across the top. That's cool.
Wow.
It's really a cool paint scheme. And Ken, I will send this to you in the next couple of days.
I was surprised you guys didn't do that because that's right in your backyard too. It runs all over Florida.
You know, I've probably never seen it. If I had been stopped in a railroad track and saw it go by, I'm like, hey, we gotta do that.
Very cool. Very neat. Very neat. And you also have some N scale stuff you wanted to show us new announcement or new well, it's coming out.
Yeah, these are a couple samples of our little N scale switchers, NW2 and SW7.
That's awesome.
One of the things that's really cool about this is, I mean, it's small. You know, I don't know how long this. Yeah, I do know how long this thing is. This is 2.5 inches long, plus or minus.
Wow.
I love how he's an engineer and he just whips out the ruler.
Well, I guess when you can know, right?
Yeah.
So, this model has in it not just a motor, all wheels driven, but it's got a dual mode decoder. It's got a rolling thunder transmitter. It's got a speaker that it's in the fuel tank, so it's ridiculously small. And even without rolling thunder, you put it on the track, it sounds pretty good. You know, I mean, it's not as loud as this, but it's pretty close. And then you hook up the rolling thunder, and for rolling thunder, we have 2 versions of it. They're really the same thing. It's a little receiver that receives the signal, and then it's for N scale. We've got a subwoofer that's like an 8-inch cube. I think it's a 50-watt speaker, and then for HO, we've got a standard. I think it's an 8-inch speaker in a however big the box is. You know, it's maybe 18 by 18 or something like that. It's a pretty good sized box. But the reason we made 2 is when we started using the HO version for the N scale, it just was kind of overwhelming. You know, most N scale layouts aren't 50 feet long. They're usually, 10 or 12 feet long, whatever. And it just, we would have to set it on, between 0 and 1 on the volume. And it just overwhelmed it, and it didn't sound good to us. And so we made a smaller subwoofer for that. And, I think it sounds remarkably good. And one of the problems that we have with this is it's really difficult for us to convey that sound, what it sounds like, because when we try to do it on over the internet, people are playing it usually on a phone or on a laptop that's got little bitty speakers. So we're like, hey, listen to this. We made this, 100-watt, 8-inch, giant subwoofer to make these low frequency sounds. Listen to them on this little tiny speaker in your phone. It doesn't work. And so it's made it really difficult for us to convey what they sound like. And again, I urge anyone who's serious about the sounds, especially N scalers. Hey, take this thing and put that little cube subwoofer underneath the table. It just expands the sound that's there. I think it's remarkable.
And with that low frequency, if you're old enough, Drew will have no concept of this, but I think we will. I've told people, you remember when Earthquake, the movie, was out, and it was
you've lost me.
And they put the bass stuff in the theater. They'd crack theater walls, and it had that shake to it, and you could feel it. In fact, that was the thing. So real you can feel it in Sensorround, and that's kind of what you brought with the Rolling Thunder. is, again, you don't think about it. When you're standing trackside and a train goes by, as much as you're hearing it, you're feeling some of that vibration too. And it does reproduce, or, you know, it gives some of that effect. So it is kind of a new dimension in kind of that environment of creating stuff. Now, Drew got to ask about, and Ken, about the Vanderbilt. I ordered from Ken the Broadway F units in Santa Fe, the black ones, the black with the red war bonnet.
Yep, black bonnets.
I'm looking forward to those. You don't have one of those on the table that you've not gotten yet, have you? Because I really want one of those.
I don't.
Oh,
But
Maybe.
Oh,
I know they're coming. I mean, the day he announced that, I immediately pre-ordered it and said, "Oh my gosh, I just ordered it."
Yeah, it's a true throwback, and I think a lot of the O scale guys that are now converting into HO or switching over, you know, we're almost kind of already sold to the number, but it just done so well, and it's a beautiful paint scheme, and it's just one of those classics that you know, nostalgic. So it's pretty cool.
Well, I'll
gotta
look up when that's coming and give Tony a call.
We got to get Bob to do another appearance. And I know Ken Silvestri is probably at home. I know he wants to be on this show. He's probably having FOMO right now. He's one of those guys that's always the center of attention. Great guy. And we wish he was on tonight. But
Ken's way better at all this than I am. The only time he sticks me out there is when he knows you're going to ask too many technical questions. Yeah. Talk to the engineer.
Well, it's amazing. You definitely know a lot. It's great to hear you come on the show, because it's nice to have, switch it up. You know, Ken's great and is always welcome, but it's nice to have the CEO of the company and speak to the customers, and everybody out there who loves your customers hear from you directly. So we definitely appreciate it for sure.
Anytime.
And,
well, how about that, Drew? Now here's another big hobby CEO person that you've gotten to meet. I mean, would you have imagined this a year ago when you got started on this?
It's been a lot's happened in the past 7 months, so that's pretty cool.
But you know, and Bob, this is what the hobby's about to me. You know, this kid is. What are you going to be, a junior or senior this year in high school?
Yeah, I'm going into my junior year.
And you know, that to me at the time, I had a 4x8 in my grandmother's basement. I spent every Sunday over there, you know, running trains. I look forward to it all week. So I think it's so awesome to see these, you know, young folks enjoying the hobby this much. Don't you too, Ken? That's just awesome.
Yeah, that's great. And Tony, for some reason, you got a knack for finding young talent, which is great. And
it's Model Railroad News. You know, I'll get this, hey, do you know about this or know about that? And through Facebook and all that, look us up, modelrailroadnews.com. And, you know, we keep up with the news and the announcements. And these younger guys are I get a lot of leads from, you saw Drew tonight. Is this in tooling? I heard that. This is my news hound here.
And it's truly why your magazine is so great. And I actually should have brought it out tonight, but I brought it home this morning, and your articles and everything is so fresh and up to date, where it's, you know, sometimes you get some magazines and they're just outdated by the time you get it. Yours is always well in advance, so it's fresh, it's crisp, it's just a great magazine. So you guys are doing really great things, and thank you, Tony, for putting this together, because
this was great. I'm so glad. You
have these ideas, and I'm like, let's make it happen.
really appreciate it, Bob. It was fantastic to have an hour of your time on this stuff, and this will be great for us news wise and review wise. I know Drew and I both picked up a ton of stuff that we'll be able to put in on the Paragon 4 reviews.
Absolutely.
Well, I appreciate everything you guys do. Ken, always a pleasure. We couldn't run our business without you.
Yeah, Bob, we really appreciate it, and your product is really fantastic. You know, Drew compared it to the Tesla, Tony the Cadillac. You know, I'll say it's the Ferrari. It's just a beautiful steam engines and diesels. You guys make a great quality product, and we sell a ton of it. So we thank you, Bob, for staying in this industry and making the product. We know it's a lot of hard work and sacrifice, and we truly thank you. And Tony, Drew, thank you so much for joining on today. It's always excellent. And to everybody out there, sorry for the hiccups in the beginning. It won't happen again. And but
yeah, right.
but thank you for sticking on. We really appreciate it. We couldn't do it. All of our businesses out here, we couldn't do it out without the customers and all our patrons, fans out there that continue to watch and support us. So we really appreciate it. So with that being said, you can get all your Broadway Limited engines, trains at TrainWorld.com. Thank you, Tony. Make sure you pick up a magazine of Model Railroad News. Subscribe to their magazines because you'll get all the latest updates. Drew, thank you so much for being young, energetic, and into the hobby. And thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Good night, y'all. Take care.